Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Lords of Limited. My name is Ben Warney, and joining me on the line, as always, Mr. Ethan Phantom Train Choo Choo Sachs. Ethan, there's been not Twitter drama because you took the high road, but I saw that someone else is trying to claim your card. How do you feel about Mike Sigrist claiming Phantom Train as his own? Are you possessive? Are you going to allow him to do that? Where's the reaction? Can we get your live thoughts?
All I want to say to someone who I would consider a friend of the pod, Mike Sigrist, truly one of the goats, is I would say, just open your podcast app. And if you did, then you would know that people have been championing Phantom Train for weeks now, from the early days of the format. So it's not nobody. Not nobody out there talking about Phantom Train, Siggy. I'm out here. There are dozens of us.
It's not people. I did not. I do like Phantom Train. I co-signed, but I don't feel like I was championing it. I just co-signed your take.
That's fair. Yes, I played Phantom Train. I believe day 2 is when I was like, "Is this it? Is the train? Is the train real? All aboard, taking tickets. The express is leaving the station." Yeah, I love Phantom Train. I didn't realize we were going to start the morning bringing violence. I didn't realize that's how we were starting the show.
No violence.
I don't know. No violence. I don't know. Calling people out by name, throwing down the gauntlet.
No gauntlets. Mike Sigrist is not going to listen to this. I just wanted your thoughts. I just wanted to stick up for my podcast partner about his early format takes.
I appreciate it. I appreciate that. It's nice to have the early format takes that age well get highlighted as opposed to the other ones,
the snowmelt stags of the world,
the snowmelt stags and adorned crocodiles of the world. We should stop naming them from the last set. What are the terrible takes from this set right now?
I think our worst take was that removal was going to be overrated. Removal is premium in this format.
That's true.
Removal is so good. And to be fair, we said the good removal was going to be good, but I think more the thought that, like, I knew the good removal spells were the good removal spells, but I think I would have said I wanted 3 to 4, and I now think that number is like 7 to 10 or something. It's much higher.
I guess I also would have thought, I want removal for the bombs, obviously. But it's interesting because you had sort of hit on the key point of it, which is that there's so many cards that have a window. It's not that you need to remove every threat. You just want a density of removal in your deck so that when those cards that demand to be answered within a given window arrive, you have the answer in that window. And you only have that if you have 6, 7, 8 removal spells in your deck. And I guess the other caveat I would say about removal is that I am much more happy to kill a job select token than I thought I would be.
Yes, absolutely. Killing a job select token works. It's good. Snapping off Thunder Magic on your opponent's White Mage's staff feels fine.
Yeah, that does not feel that as if the game goes super long, you're not going to love that exchange. But if you got to do it, you got to do it. And you only can do it and have that decision if you're packing a bunch of Thunder Magics in your deck.
Yes.
So we've got a really fun episode, I think. I loved how you started things off in our show notes this week with a couple of pet decks, we'll say, for lack of a better word. Some sort of I think people know how to navigate blue-red, blue-white, black-green, some of the clear top decks in the format. And we're going to dive into some of the tier 2 decks that we've been having a lot of success with and a lot of fun with in the past, week or two, I'd say.
I resent the term tier 2 being applied to one of my archetypes here. It's the best deck I've drafted all format. I think it is an archetype, and I'm backing you on Phantom Train. I need the support reciprocated. Tier 1.
I back everything about the deck you want to outline except the titular card about it. I truly back everything else about what you want to talk about except that card. So that's the little teaser I'll give to you. We'll do some housekeeping. We'll dive into some big picture format updates and then get into those archetypes. Let's chat about the Patreon page. Patreon.com/Lords of Limited is where folks can go to give back to the show if they so choose. we have some great perks over at the Patreon for folks who want to support the show in that way. One is access to the Lords of Limited Discord, and the other is access to this podcast feed, which gets you this episode a day early, ad free, and also gets you access to our weekly bonus episode of Lords Unlimited. So if you want to check that out, if you think, hey, I like these guys, I like the show, I want to get into a community of like-minded limited individuals, that's the place to do it. We want to shout out our new patrons the first week that they joined. This week we're welcoming Adam, Rykor, Mogget, Christian, and Justin. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We really appreciate your support.
Yeah, cannot say thank you enough.
So talk to me. Where are you at this week? Do you feel like you've got any revelations about the format, about how you're approaching Final Fantasy drafts post MC Vegas?
Yeah, I think that's where the largest of my revelations come from. I've drafted a handful of times earlier in the week, but I was not able to draft a ton this week. I think I do feel differently about the format, fairly significantly differently. And I think there's multiple different ways to approach the format. I know you still really like white and are probably drafting a bunch of white. I'm viewing it as if we're one of the things that we like to do on Lords of Limited is assign a wedge to a format. And I'm drafting it, I think, like a Grixis format. I do like red. I think red has stocks have come up for whatever that means as far as the color goes from the early few days of data or things like that. And I was still believing in it then, but I've just kind of decided I like these cards and I like playing with them. I like the Grixis decks. So that's what I've been trying to draft and then off ramping into white when it's super flowing. And I think I'm generally hoping not to be green unless it's Sultai, late game, towny control stuff. Like I will draft that stuff, certainly, because everything is good in the format. It's balanced. I think we nailed that about the format. But along with viewing it as a Grixis format, you can make the game slow down. I think that's the biggest thing that's shifted for me was week one. I was viewing it as fast synergy, just try to get your synergies out, cooking, popping faster than your opponents. And I'm much more interested in disrupting my opponent's synergy than playing my own hyper synergistic deck. Like I want to be packing removal, I want to be packing card advantage, card selection, like more of just a spells control deck, that sort of thing.
Okay.
I think that's what I'm wanting to do, and I think if you approach the format that way, you can make the games go a lot longer and be a lot slower.
Yeah, that all tracks for me, I think, especially the thing about green. I really have, I mean, it feels good.
Classic Lords of Limited.
It feels good to be able to say it and not feel like it's super wrong. But I really have like left green by the wayside. And I think for me, as we'll get to with one of the decks, I mean, I think it's no secret that I've been a huge fan of black-white basically the entirety of the format. It's still my favorite deck to draft. And we'll talk about it a little later in the episode. So for me, it's more of a Mardu format, but I finally this week really, I guess basically since the draft we did before the live show where I 3-0'd with red black, you had 3-0'd with red black. I was like, all right, I got to draft this deck more. And I've drafted a lot more red black this week and am in love. So like that's where I really like, I'm like, I really want to draft black white or black red if at all possible. And then we'll off ramp to other things if that's not available to me. But one of the reasons in classic Ethan fashion, one of the reasons I like those decks is I feel like I often really can get into them because people are fighting for the blue cards a lot of the time.
That was going to be my question for you. Do you still feel like blue is maybe slightly above the rest and you're just fine drafting the other stuff? Or is it you don't enjoy playing with the blue cards? Do you feel like you're leaving stuff on the table, not playing blue, that sort of thing?
No, I guess it's like a slight metagame, slight preference call. I think blue is better. I definitely think blue is better than white if we're talking about Grixis versus Mardu format. I think blue is better than white for sure. But I also feel like it's slightly contested. Like especially like if it was, I don't know, Pro Tour Life or Arena Open Life, like I'd want to be trying to draft blue, but I would be expecting those cards to be scooped up early and then trying to think about this as a good off ramp or a good detour if that's the sense I'm getting at the table.
Sure. And if you are a lover of green, don't let us poo-poo what you've got going on, because we did a team draft the last day of
oh
Vegas,
my gosh, yes.
Greg Hatch absolutely smacked our team around. I think he was one of the only like green drafters and certainly the only one who was interested in chocobos, and bird is the word, just knocked all of us around. He 3-0'd the pod.
Yeah, he 3-0'd that team draft with a nasty red green splash white Choco's deck. So that's fair. Bird was the word in that draft pod. I mean, Summon Fat Chocobo is a great card.
It's a
And I
very good
drafted
card.
I drafted for the first time this week a true Towns deck, like cast the draw 4 for blue multiple times. And that's a dragon I'm going to be chasing for the rest of the format for sure. So yeah, I'm not trying to poo poo green in all aspects of the format. I just feel like a lot of I still feel how I felt despite Grey Catch, beating us senseless with red green. That red green and green white are two decks I'm soft avoiding at this point.
Yes, I would say the same.
Okay, let's check in on some cards that we want to touch base on here.
Yeah, so kicking things off with Cat, which is the 2 and white 1/3 flying vigilance. If you have 2 or more artifacts, it gets +2/+0. I played with this and against it a bunch in Vegas, and some of that was sealed, but a lot of it was draft. I'm pretty convinced that Cat is the best white common. I've never been on the battlefield, and I've thought, I can ignore that. Like, it's very large, and even when it's a 1/3 flying vigilance, poking in, holding some stuff back, or maybe it gets a counter on it from combat tutorial, what have you, or it's wearing a piece of equipment. Like, the card is just problematic.
Yes, I agree. I don't think I can co-sign it being better than white Oracite, but I could co-sign it definitely being the best white creature.
Sure. Does white Oracite being a 4-drop have any sort of a knock against it for you? Because I have really
You know it
felt,
does. We've talked about this for
yeah.
weeks. Yeah, you know it
That's
does.
why I like picking Cat higher than it, because in white it's so easy to just end up with, and in certain color pairs in the format especially, it's just so easy to end up with 8 4-drops or something.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess the more your deck can make Slash of Light feel like Doomblade, then the less you care about White Oracite. But again, I do feel like that's most white decks can make Slash of Light feel real good.
Yeah. So anyway,
Uh,
that's where I'm valuing Cat, and I'm super impressed with the card.
Speaking of the 4-drop problem, Weapons Vendor, I think it's finally time for us to say we were wrong, or we've been too high on this card. I think for the majority of the format, this is the 3 and a white 2/2 ETB draw card, and you can once a turn at combat pay 1 to move an equipment. Not to say it's not. It's still a very good card. The 4-drop problem, like the fact that you can get glutted at 4s so easily in this format, does knock it down a peg. I think you have to be taking your white Orasites, your Sephiroth's interventions, etc., over them clearly. And then there is a slight, like, if you don't have Samurai's Katana, or even something like the Warrior's Sword, the 4-mana 4/3 with the re-equip for 5, like, if you're not getting big discounts, if all you're doing is moving around your White Mage's Staff or your Paladin's Arms or whatever, like, it's less exciting.
I agree. I'm viewing Weapons Vendor as more of a premium red white card, like only, as opposed
Mm-hmm.
to, and also that you don't need to pick it that highly necessarily, because it only goes in that deck, so you might get them a little bit later than I would have been expecting early on in the format. It's been interesting. Like, I think what has happened to Weapons Vendor actually is what you and I both initially felt from Sibsig Appraiser. Like, but that's actually
Hmm.
happened to Weapons Vendor. Like, by all reasonable card evaluation things, like, it should be, I think, a better card than it is.
Yeah, I think it's more that I was too hot and bothered about it for too long, and I've just come down to reality, which is that it's good, not great.
Sure. Yeah. Syncopate's the next one on this list, which has moved up a fair amount for me. So that's blue X counter target spell, unless the spell's controller pays X and you exile the spell. Exiling the spell has been super relevant in this format. Like, that's felt real bad at times. And I think as I've played Grixis reactive decks more, the ability to hold up removal or a counter has been pretty good. And I prefer Swallowed by Leviathan to Syncopate, certainly. But if I don't get copies of Swallowed by Leviathan, which is the 2 and a blue, counter something unless they pay X equal to the number of cards in your graveyard and you surveil 2, Syncopate does the job. And I'm not packing my deck with 3 or 4 of them necessarily, but I value the first copy of Syncopate pretty highly.
Yeah, I think it's more. I do want to be conscious of, like, having that as you often do with counterspells, having the toolbox of things to do at instant speed, whether it's removal, whether it's card draw, whether it's a top or bottom spell. Like the more you're packing that instant speed interaction, the better it is. I've had decks where I've been like, because I'm the same way with Syncopate. I feel like I've come up on it. I feel like this is a good Syncopate format, but there have been decks where I've put it in where I'm like, oh, I actually only have like 2 or 3 other things that are instants, and that makes Syncopate quite a bit worse.
Yeah. Laughing Mad is up next. This is 2 in a red, instant. You discard a card, then draw 2, and you can flash it back for 3 in a red. I've moved this pretty far down in my pick order. I was way too willing to put this in my decks, and I think ultimately it's really clunky unless you can get it in the graveyard for free by discarding it, which then makes you think, oh great, I'll play 3 Laughing Mads. And there's been times I've played 2 or 3 Laughing Mads, and it's just not good. I think it is play if you need this effect desperately, and otherwise hope to not play it generally.
I wish you had told me that you were too willing to play this, because I could have just told you to not
That is bad.
play it. Yeah, just not play it. Yeah, I think this is definitely a hoping to not play. Like, I don't even think it's a like, well, you just have to find the right home. I think even the right home is an awkward home for this card.
Yeah.
I like this next card. Yeah, Light of Judgment, the 4 in a red, deal 6 and blow up an equipment attached to the thing. I've played, and this has actually really been in my red black decks this week. 1 copy of Light of Judgment at the top of the curve. If I only get 1 Sephiroth's intervention, I'm not mad about it.
Yeah, it goes a long way in that it's a little clunkier than you would like, but just the ability to blow up a problematic equipment is nice attached to a removal spell.
I agree.
Suplex is up next. This is 1 in a red for a sorcery, deal 3 and exile it, or blow up an artifact and exile it. It's gone way up for me, especially as I've started playing more and more Sorceress's schemes. Those 2 are best friends. Like, so all you need is 1 suplex. Once you hit it, then you can loop it with the Sorceress's schemes. And that combo is good enough that I would even run 2 suplexes. Like, as I'm starting to play red-black control or red-blue control, I've really, really liked suplex.
And again, exile is big on suplex, just like it is on syncopate.
Land Cyclers is up next. I think we have been in the habit of just dismissing 2 cost Land Cyclers, and I think all of them are pretty okay here. And with the caveat that I have played exclusively best of 3 since about like day 3 of the format. So no idea what the best of 1 life is like at the moment. When I tune into streams, it seems like the decks are absolutely broken in half just from drafting with weaker pods. But I think all of the Land Cyclers are pretty playable except for the white one. I think I would be generally hoping to not run the white one, but black is a problem. Green's a problem. Blue is fine, and red is fine. I think blue is the weakest of the next 4, but certainly the Jund one's good enough, and I will run the blue one.
Yeah, I'm still basically like, I feel like there's a line in the sand for me. Like, I like Malboro clear number 1, Balam T-Rex clear number 2, but I don't want to play green that much, and then I don't feel like I want to play the others. Like, I agreed. Like the white one, because I play a lot of white. It's a disaster. Like, something went wrong when Cloudbound Moogle makes my deck.
For sure. But I think the blue and the red one, I just got some more respect from them playing at Vegas in those team drafts. Like, they and the decks are going to be scrappier there, I guess. So people are dipping further than they would, but they're cards. I mean, like, you can't ignore a 5/4 haste trample. Like, it is a problem that must be dealt with. And that being in sort of a flex land slot as your 23rd card is pretty nice. The fact that you kind of want to run 18 land, and then when you do hit your land drops, great, you get this 5/4 trample haste. Like, I think it's fine to include it as a one of.
I like that in the context of, like, the more you're playing in competitive pods, like the more competitive your pods are, you should expect your deck quality to be weaker. And then, like, those cards are, you're right, they're just right on the line of, like, it's not bad to run it, and that sort of flexibility of 17 versus 18 lands and having a top end threat, etc. I'm in.
Speaking of competitive pods, are we getting an arena open for this format? I keep every time they send the weekly announcements to my inbox on Magic Arena, I faithfully open the article and scroll to the bottom, and I'm like, dang it, I don't see an arena open for this format yet.
Okay, let me introduce the life hack for you. don't ever read those messages, and just wait for MTG Scribe to tell you when
To
it's going to
announce the Arena
happen.
Open is coming.
Yeah. We have an MTG news section of our Discord, and he faithfully posts there every time. That's all I do.
Yeah.
So I'm waiting for Mike to let us know when it's going to happen. And if you're not, I would recommend mtgscribe.com. Give it a little bookmark. That's where I get my Magic news from.
All right. Love
But
to hear
yes,
it.
I don't know. I don't know if we're getting an Arena Open for the set, because what do we have, like 1 month left until Edge of Eternity is around the corner, I think.
The prizing will be 1 collector booster box, 2 collector booster boxes, 3 collector booster boxes, and it'll be like playing for
it won't be
$10,000 of stakes. Or
it won't be money anymore. Yeah, it's just collector boosters.
next on the list is Poison the Waters. This is the 1 and a black sorcery that's modal, and you can either give creatures -1/-1 until end of turn, or look at your opponent's hand and choose an artifact or creature card from it. I've really liked main decking that card. I think it's totally fine to main deck, and even good to main deck if you are on the control life, as I've been. Like, slots really well into blue-black control, red-black control, just because of the flexibility of it. And a lot of this format is about not dying to your opponent's best cards. So I've liked it in that respect. And it's also excellent out of the sideboard, sometimes multiple copies out of the sideboard.
Yeah, it's a card I value highly out of the board. I don't think I've main decked it yet. I have seen it with not a fair amount, but a non-zero amount from my opponents, and that's what makes me a little nervous about main decking it. But I guess maybe the -1/-1 buyout is still pretty good against those.
Well, and also in the control decks, I think if you're valuing generating card advantage, like as you're getting more and more card advantage, I think you can afford to have more cards that aren't like completely impactful always all the time. More silver bullet type cards.
Well, and the other thing is, like, what I'm hearing as you're painting a picture with this list of cards that you've made, and one of the things I'm hearing is these like reactive control decks are going up for you, and control style cards are going up for you, and so maybe you're not getting an impactful play from your opponent with Poison the Waters. As long as it's not missing, fine. But more importantly, you get to see how you have to map out the next 4 turns. And so you're like, oh, okay. And I know it's your warm and fuzzy feeling aside, but more getting to go, it's less about knowing what's coming and getting mad about how they top decked, and more about, so turn 4 is when I need to hold up Syncopate.
Yeah, but you've always poo-pooed me loving getting to look at my opponent's hand. I think that's valuable information. And every time I've said that as sticking up for a card, you just completely stomp all over my idea.
It's because I see it in the context of having counter magic, but oftentimes I feel like you're talking about it like it just feels nice to know what they have.
It does, so that you can map exactly what you said, so that you can map out the game accordingly.
I removed the emotional component and I gave what the actionable strategic advice was.
Yeah, which is also, that's what that warm fuzzy feeling comes from for me, that I know
right.
how to operate strategically correctly. On to the next card, Final Days. This is 2 black, make 2/2 tapped zombies. You can flash it back for 4 BB to make zombies equal to the number of creatures in your graveyard. I've come down on this a lot. Like early on, this did some cool stuff, but I think this is not what the black-green decks are about. And oftentimes there's tension with creature counts and wanting to up your creature count, but having good job select cards or having good interaction. It's just gone way down for me.
Yeah, I think this is basically just a black, green, gold card. Like my black, red decks, sometimes even my black, white decks, like the actual creature counts are quite low because of all the job select stuff. And the enter the battlefield tapped is a huge cost with this, I think. And this same for me with Shambling Seath, the 2 and a black 3/3 that enters tapped and you can get back from your yard by paying a black when you cast a non-creature spell. Like, it's just, I have just not been impressed by this card. I don't think it does enough. It's interesting. Like the defensive ground stuff is all 1/4s, and this still doesn't punch through that in any meaningful way. I'm just off of both of these cards.
Queen Brawny is up next. This is a 2 and a red 2/1 prowess, and whenever it attacks, you make a wizard token. This looked horrible to me, like when I was evaluating cards, and it's way better than that. Like
Yeah.
I have already moved it up since the start of the format, but I think actively looking to play it, even in decks that don't care about wizards, it's kind of the scroll thief effect that I always love, where like there's the threat of you attacking or using a removal spell and punching through. Except it's almost better than Scroll Thief because it gives you board presence and it gives you a card that could be used as a chump blocker. It forces your opponent to think, well, like it just does so much more than it looks like it does on face value.
I agree. I've felt that, like little inklings of that, seeing it on the other side of the battlefield. Saw you put it in our show notes. Then drafted red black a bunch this week. Have now played with the card a bunch and really like it. Like I think I think the sort of the reason it looks so bad, or the reason maybe you don't see the fruits of its labor, is that it will often eat a removal spell before you untap with it. But it eating a suplex, a veins treachery, a thunder magic, yeah, they're up on mana slightly, but those are premium removal spells that your little 3-drop is getting. And I have also had the experience where, like, the flip side of that is untap, play a job select thing. It's a 3/2. It attacks into a 2/3. They think they're blocking. Then you use a removal spell. You use your thunder magic to pick off something smaller. Now it's a 4/3. Now you ate their 2/3. The ceiling on that card is nuts.
The ceiling is insane. Yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
more what it is. Like the floor is fine and the ceiling's insane. Like the ceiling is way higher than Scroll Thief because it can put your
Yes.
opponent in some terribly awkward situations with the prowess stuff. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this next card, I really want to get a gut check on this card from you, which is Saz's Chocobo, which is the single green 0/1 landfall, put a +1/+1 counter on it.
Mm-hmm.
I loathe this card. I don't think it's a very good Magic card, and I want a gut check on that from you. My evaluation of it is that I feel like it's very dependent on being on turn 1. And when it is, it's pretty good. Like it's difficult to deal with when it comes in on turn 1, but basically any turn other than turn 1, and it is not great at all. And I keep almost always, like, my opponents play it on turn 1, and I keep almost always beating it despite it was on turn 1, like through, being stuck on a color or missing a land drop or whatever, and I get so frustrated losing to it. Is this a good card? What should I be feeling about this card?
I feel the same way as you. I'm never gonna play this card basically because I'm not playing green aggressive decks, and so I'm not interested in drafting this card. And I agree with you that, like, yeah, it's really good on turn 1, but that's it. And, like, I don't know, it feels like Delver of Secrecy to me. Like, yeah, when it does the thing, it's awesome. But
that's how I'm viewing it in Limited. Like, you wouldn't value Delver highly in Limited.
No, Delver does not do the thing in Limited.
Okay, so you think I'm not crazy?
I think you're not crazy. What's the why?
So we'll get the rest of the internet telling us I'm crazy. I don't know. I just feel like people love this card. They keep putting in their decks, and it just doesn't seem that good to me. And I'm wondering if I'm wrong and that I should be playing it more.
Yeah, the second highest game in hand win rate uncommon of green uncommons, behind Summon Fenrir, ahead of Vanille, ahead of Torgal. But, like, that makes sense because, like, the times, like, most of the time when it's in your hand, it's in your opening hand. It's that mean, like, game in hand win rate is probably a pretty bad metric to, like, understand this card. Like, I bet there, like, that's all I check when I look at 17 lands, but I feel like to understand the complete story of this card, that can't be what you check because it's going to be so heavy. It's so heavily skewed by, like, oh, was it in your hand? It was probably in your opening hand. Like,
well, and I'm not even being anti-data right now, because I do want to know about this card, and I'm glad that you looked it up. But for people who maybe want us to talk about data or discuss it more, like, that's the end of the discussion we can have for any data for cards ever. Like, I just have nothing to say back to you. And not because I don't like it or don't trust it. Like, I have no more to offer to the conversation, which is why we leave data out of the podcast.
Numbers good, card bad. That's about as.
I need to tell this story on the podcast. So round 1. Speaking of data, round 1. No,
it wasn't even round 1.
It wasn't even round 1. It was deck building. Yeah. It was deck building of the sealed PTQ. I was way at the back tables because I had different email addresses, and all of us plebs who had different email addresses were at the back tables building, because normally it's alphabetical order, but the people at the end were people who had problems with the companion app. So I was sitting there building, and everybody was kind of chatting, and there were a bunch of really nice people sitting around us.
Judge, you're not supposed to be talking during deck building.
Yeah, it was the Wild West back there. it was the Wild West. People weren't giving deck building advice. We were just talking, but there was a lot of talking.
I slapped someone on the wrist who was next to me during, like, when you're like fanning out the cards or whatever
Yeah.
for your opponent,
They were
and he
like,
was
that's a
like,
good one.
he was like, yeah, talking about it. I was like, you really are not supposed to be talking right now. And he was like, okay, I'm sorry. I was like, sorry to be the bad guy, but rules are rules.
Yep. So there was a dad there with his son, and his son was playing, but the dad was like registering the pool for his son to make sure that there were no mistakes. Son was probably 11, 12, if I had to guess, somewhere in that range,
Mm-hmm.
like young to be playing Magic at a PTQ, but like obviously very intelligent kid. And the dad was super nice, just chatting with people and all that stuff while he was registering the pool. And then the son built the pool, and then the dad was registering the final deck. So I was wearing my Magicians Against Data shirt, my Mad T-shirt, proudly, and
Mm-hmm.
he just happened to see my shirt, and he said, "Oh, is that shirt about 17 lands? Do you not believe in 17 lands data?" And use that word believe, and
Believe.
I was like, yeah, that's what it's about. Like it just left it at that. Like
Uh-huh.
didn't go into a tirade or tell him about the podcast or anything. I was just like, yeah. And so the dad was like, oh, that's so interesting. And he turned to his son and said, hey, look at that guy's shirt. What do you think about that? He doesn't believe in 17 lands data. And the kid was like, made the kid thinking face and was like, that doesn't seem very smart to me.
You should have given us, yeah, gotta hand out those tokens to the skeptical kids, get them mad believers.
Yep.
Next up, you've got Stiltskin Moogle Merchant. We rarely talk about rares, but here we are. A single white 1/2 legendary lifelink, and you can pay 2 tap to donate another permanent you control to your opponent if you do. Or if, like, basically, if it makes its way over to their side of the battlefield, you draw a card.
Yeah. I've played with this card a ton. I
Mm.
really like Stiltskin Moogle Merchant. It can do a lot of unassuming, tricky things. Like, you can donate stuff under a removal spell from your opponent. You can donate the saga creatures on their third chapter, assuming you remember to set stops appropriately. You can donate things in combat that maybe we're gonna die that then go over to your opponent instead of dying, which isn't always good, but sometimes, I'm thinking they're going to eat something and then flipping it over there if you need, depending on what you're digging for, like a wrath. Like the white's got some pretty banger cards. Like I've played it in decks that want to dig towards wraths or dig towards summon Leviathan is especially nuts because then you bounce all the stuff that you donated back to your hand.
Mm.
It just does a lot of things, and I really like it.
Yeah, I've played with it in a couple decks and also like it quite a bit. Next up, we've got Battle Menu. This is the one in a white. Choose one of 4, make a 2/2, kill a thing with power 4 or more, give something +0/+4, or gain 4 life. I've played with this card a lot. I've been treating it as premium like the entirety of the format. I think it is just fine. I don't think it is premium. I think it is like I have found power 4 to not be around that much, which is weird, but like because I look at it, I'm like, oh my god, it's a like awesome removal spell for their bomb plus all these other buyout like finicky things. You basically never want to make a 2/2 with it. Like, yeah, you can I have ambushed, Saj's Chocobo. You can try and ambush that as a 1/2 or whatever. Like I've ambushed some things with an instant speed 2/2. But most of the time, I would like this as a kill spell, and 4 power things just don't pop up that much.
I agree.
Okay, Magic Damper. In the world of removal, is Magic Damper just great? Single blue, target creature you control gets +1/+1 and gains hexproof until end of turn. Untap it. I have not played this card that much, partially because I haven't played blue that much. But I think this card is probably just great, right?
I think it's situationally great. I think you have to pick your spots to play it. I think its value goes up in terms of the value of cards that you have that are at like 2, 3, 4 mana value that you really want to protect. Because one stuff's
Hmm.
more expensive than that. It's really hard to wait the turn to hold up the extra mana. But you better believe if I've got something like Venat, which is the one white 3/3 that, wants you to cast legendaries. I'm going to wait till turn 4 to play my Venat and hold up my Magic Damper. But I think you have to have targets like Venat or a similar high value target before you want to actively be packing the Magic Damper. The card that's similar that I do think is just great is Restoration Magic. Restoration Magic is
Yes.
insane, and you should just be playing it in every white deck. But Magic Damper is niche enough that I think you've really got to have high value, low mana value targets. And I mean, like, as in cards your opponents want to kill that don't cost very much, that's where Magic Damper shines.
I mean, is Sahagin fits that bill? Like, if your deck is doing the Sahagin thing, like, your opponent's going to have to kill that. And is that not something worth protecting?
Sahagins a card I've come down on after
Hmm.
playing with it more. I think it is, rather than a reason to go after, I think it is just a very excellent payoff if 4 mana value spells is open in your seat.
Okay, that's fair.
I've come down
Speaking
on it
of,
slightly, and
oh,
I still think it's an excellent card. I want to be clear about that, but I think I had overcorrected too much on it.
something about Restoration Magic that I think is really good is that it's so nice to have in conjunction with White Auracite, because Restoration Magic protects any permanent. And White Auracite, the turn you cast it, protects itself with Restoration Magic because it taps for the white mana. That has come up for me non-zero amount of times. The last card on this list, which was, I think, segue us nicely into our final fantasies, our pet decks of the format, is Ring of the Lucci, which is the 4 mana rock legendary artifact. Tap to add 2 mana, or pay 2, tap it, pay 1 life, tap target non-land permanent. I want to be very careful with the words I use about this card, because I don't think this card is like good, but I do think it is ever so slightly underrated. I have found myself, I play this sometimes when it checks boxes, as I will often say on, like, in with niche cards, like, the more boxes it checks. I had a white legendaries deck, and this is legendary, so this triggers Venat. White decks, I think, are actually great homes for this, because with all your job select stuff, you have a place to move around the 2 mana. I had Ash in that deck, and Ash being able to find this as a air quotes removal spell that is also an artifact, like, you get in this weird spots where you care about types in some white decks, and maybe it's just decks in general, where, like, this being a permanent or an artifact that also is a removal spell ish, but also will ramp because you are going to have places to put your mana, and it's legendary. Like, a lot of boxes it can check, and the more that it does, yeah, it's a 4-drop, so you also have to be in a world where your deck isn't full of better 4-drops, which is hard to do. But if all of those things line up, I just think this card is like, it does have homes and it can shine, and I would have people point their gaze to it in the later weeks of the format.
So I have a question for you. That was
Yes, sir.
all. That was all very measured. Do you feel like I'm going to push back against this take? What is your gut here?
Yeah, you're going to be like, no, this card's trash. Except we did have it in that blue red, your first trophy of the format deck. So maybe you love this card. I don't know.
I am going to see your measured take, and I'm going to
Uh huh.
raise you. I think this card's just pretty good. Like, I've played
What?
with it. I've played with it a fair
The
amount.
biggest upset of podcasting history. Okay. Okay.
I've played with it a fair amount, and I've played against it a fair amount, and I never feel good when my opponents cast this card. Like, they're untapping with 8 mana, potentially 7 mana, something ridiculous, and then it's
It,
excellent against any sort of job select deck. Like, it
well,
shuts down multiple pieces of equipment, or your opponent has to make sure they're on different creatures, which also reduces the effectiveness of the job select's game plan.
it
Basically,
also
the only
hoses
card.
the sagas. The fact that you get to go, you can attack with your saga for the one turn you want to.
Yeah, I just think this card's pretty good. I agree. I would say this card is just underrated, not so slightly underrated. I like Ring of the Lucci.
Great. Well, I think that, like I said, I think that segues us very nicely into our favorite archetype deep dives. And I'll kick things off to you first, sir.
Yeah, the aforementioned titular card to
Yeah.
my pet deck in the format right now, which is the I just am drafting such that I can hopefully get into this archetype. Is Triple Triad Control, baby. And if you're not a believer in Triple Triad, I was not, and I took your word for it. Like, I liked this card. You told me it was terrible. I took your word for it. Data said it was terrible, whatever. And since playing with it, it played out exactly how I thought it was going to, which was very well, which is, so this is 3 red red for an enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, each player exiles the top card of their library. Until end of turn, you can play the card you exiled this way, and each other card exiled with lesser mana value than it without paying their mana costs. So basically, options for Triple Triad are, if you flip a land, you're never playing anything from your opponent. So you get your land drop from the turn. But if you flip a card, if your opponent flips a land, you get to play their land for free. Or if you flip a card and they flip a card and yours is higher mana value, you get to play both cards, which is nuts. But the thing about in this specific red-black deck, which hinges around Sorceress's Schemes, which I am...
That's what the deck really should be titled. This is Sorceress's Schemes Control.
This is...
And it's Triple Triad for some Ben shenanigans.
But okay, let me go into the deck a little bit more, and I'm going to try to sell you on Triple Triad. You are correct that for the average listener, this should be titled Sorceress's Schemes Control. And shout out to Sam's episode on Sorceress's Schemes, Rough Drafts. You should listen to that podcast and this episode specifically if you're interested in trying to draft this deck. I think I've gone a little farther than he has in terms of like, it is the focus point of the deck.
In terms of off the deep end.
Sure.
Yeah.
But Sorceress's Schemes is, if you haven't played with the card yet, 3 in a red, sorcery. You get back a card from your graveyard to your hand, instant or sorcery card from your graveyard to your hand, or you can pull something out of exile. And then it's got flashback for 4 in a red. So if you have 2 Sorceress's Schemes, you can loop them in that the one can get back the other copy out of exile, much like the spider spawning thing back in the day, except it's not nearly as quickly immediately impactful. But the beautiful thing that Sorceress's Schemes do when you loop them is you never run out of interaction. Like, so you, like, the best home, if you're into wanting to pack removal in this format, like if you're subscribing to removal's great in this format, you have to play a red deck with double Sorceress's Schemes and interaction, because you feel not, we were talking earlier about how snapping off Thunder Magic on a job select thing feels fine. You feel amazing when you snap off Thunder Magic on your opponent's White Mage's Staff when you're packing Sorceress's Schemes. So I also forgot to mention the bottom part of the card, which is great, which is that you get a rebate of a red mana when you cast Sorceress's Schemes. So you can instantly on 4 play it and then recast your Thunder Magic, or play it, recast your Lightning Bolt, which is excellent. So the crux of the deck is basically 2 or more Sorceress's Schemes. I think there is no limit to the copies of Sorceress's Schemes I would play at this point if you're in this archetype, because you want to find the card, you want to find 2 of them so badly. And once you find 2 of them, you never run out of things to do.
Yeah, I guess like I think you're underrating, because I've had 2 Sorceress's Schemes in multiple decks now, have had opportunities to pick up more copies, but the lower part of my curve doesn't support it that well. Like I have like a Thunder Magic or a Suplex, like don't really get you really want the trio of like Thunder Magic, Suplex, Vane's Treachery. Like if you can get all of those, then you're really, really cooking. The card that I found is so this should have been on our movers up thing, but like I think cat's out of the bag, people know it. Resentful Revelation is so amazing in this deck because it digs you towards your Sorceress's Schemes
and fills the
graveyard. Yeah. And also Resentful Revelation ain't a bad thing to grab out of exile. Like talk about that's so much value. If you've cast it, flashed it back, then you use Schemes to go grab it out of exile. So good.
I agree. You have to definitely, the low part of your curve spell-wise is critically important for this archetype. So you can't be picking your 4 Sorceress's Schemes over like a Thunder Magic or something. That would be insane behavior. But assuming, I would not have initially thought that prior to playing the deck, that I would have said, yeah, you want 2 Sorceress's Schemes and you're good. I would be fine playing 4 copies, assuming I had, a good spell count at the bottom of my curve.
Okay.
But I think the difference is like you've just played Sorceress's Schemes in decks. Like, do you feel like you've played a deck where Sorceress's Schemes was the linchpin card of your deck?
I mean, I think I would say so. I mean, it's just as you would say, it's a pure control deck. Really, it's not Drago control, but it's pure control because it's just packing like removal spells, Resentful Revelations as card advantage and card selection, and Sorceress's Schemes as like, I can answer whatever. Like you got a wide board, then I get Fire Magic. You got a threat I need to kill, then I get Sephiroth's Intervention. Like it, and then it's just winning with attrition-y wizard damage.
That's not what I did, but I see what you're saying, and I see that outline.
I think it's still a Sorceress's Schemes deck, but it's not. I guess it's not the Triple Triad.
It's not this. It's not what I'm outlining there. Like it sounds like you've had decks that are very good where Sorceress's Schemes was just a very good card in your deck. Like I'm talking like double Thunder Magic, Lightning Bolt, double Veins Treachery, double Suplex or something at the bottom, where like Sorcerer's Schemes then just is your card advantage engine. Like that's what
Yes.
it provides to the deck, is an unlimited card advantage engine, assuming you have cheap removal and can keep the board clear, which the deck is very good at if you're packing 9 to 10 removal spells or whatever. So I think that the deck can be red black or red blue. I think red black's better than blue because black chalks you full of more removal spells. You've got Veins Treachery at the bottom of the curve. You've got Sephiroth's Intervention to get anything dead, that sort of stuff. But what Triple Triad does for the deck, and to be clear, you can draft this deck without Triple Triad, but I do think if you're going to make Triple Triad a good card, and I do think it's a powerful card, this is its home because the deck wants everything that Triple Triad provides, which is you never want to miss a land drop in this archetype. Like you because the deck's so mana hungry because Sorceress's Schemes is so mana hungry. So even when Triple Triad quote unquote whiffs and you just guarantee your land drop for the turn, that feels great. And the turns where you flip a card and your opponent flips a land, that feels like winning the lottery, even more so than casting 2 spells, because you get the land drop plus the free spell, plus your mana is all still available to flashback your Sorceress's Schemes and pick off something small. Like the deck is great at keeping you alive. That's what Triple Triad wants, right? Is you to not be under pressure, and it's very powerful if you're not under pressure. And I think this deck creates that game state for Triple Triad really well and helps you hit land drops, which is great for Sorcerer's Schemes. That's what I think Triple Triad brings to the deck. And I do think this is his best home. You can draft the deck without Triple Triad. I will be the first person to admit that. It should be called Sorcerer's Schemes Control, and I should be talking about how Triple Triad fits well into the deck, but I'm pretty jazzed about Triple Triad, if you can't tell.
Yeah, look,
and these are our pet decks. So the other thing that I realized while drafting this deck, which had 2 Triple Triads in it, which was sick. Love Triple Triad. But the land cyclers are awesome to include if you have Triple Triad, because they're high mana value hits for Triple Triad, a double spell. They also are land drops that you want to never miss in this archetype because the deck is so mana hungry. Like they're at the intersection of everything the deck wants as well. And the other card that is absolutely nuts in the deck is Call the Mountain Chocobo, because it gives you a thing to trade off your opponent's ground creatures. It's double land drops. It helps with the red on Triple Triad if you're in the Triple Triad version specifically. But Call was awesome. I cannot state enough how mana hungry this deck is. Like if there's a way you lose, it's to not having enough mana. And as far as how the games finish out, I think your finishers can just be those land cyclers. If, like I said, if you're in the Triple Triad version. But other than that, I don't think you really need anything special rather than boatloads of removal, because you will naturally just be packing some other good cards. Like mine had Jekt, the 4/3 Menace. Like that was great in the deck because I could keep the board very clear for his Menace. But normally in a deck, Jekt would be like one of the flagship cards. It was just a card that happened to make it into my deck because it's a very good card, but it was not the reason the deck did well ever. It was always spells plus Sorcerer's Schemes. So your finishers can be the land cyclers. I think if you're red-black, you're trying to put a removal plus Sorcerer's Schemes lock on your opponent. If you're red-blue, and you can use the red removal, you can put a Sorcerer's Schemes plus counterspell soft lock on your opponents, which is pretty nice to be able to do. Like that feels great also.
I faced that. I faced my opponent. Sorceress scheming back. True counterspell from the bonus sheet. And I was like, well, basically toast here. Like, I don't know what to do. If you're not already in a commanding position, you're done.
I have loved casting Sorceress' Schemes. It's officially my pet card of the format in Triple Triad, I think, at this point, and that is the dragon I'm chasing the rest of the format.
Yeah, Sorceress' Schemes rules. I had you talked about like the Sorceress' Schemes grabbing schemes out of exile as that being the loop. I was just juggling Sorceress' Schemes on a like sort of stalled board with my wizards, just going like, here's 4 mana, trigger 3 wizards, and like it's so here's very funny. So from Lords Unlimited, we made a bet about Black Mage's Rod and Heck Dies, and I don't know if you've checked, but I'm winning the bet now. Unfortunately for you,
brutal.
But if it's any consolation, and I was on the side of Heck Dies, if it's any consolation, I don't have eyes for Heck Dies anymore. I only have eyes.
So you're gonna get my $20 and the feel
and your good advice.
Black Mage's Rod.
Black Mage's Rod is so good. It's so good. Yeah, love that card. Love the wizards. You were right. Speaking about black cards, let's talk about black white. I'm going to title it Artifacts. But one of the things that I think is very interesting about black white is that it has different flavors that it can go down depending on what you see. That's one of the reasons I like the deck. But I would title it Artifacts as being its best theme, and I would call it a like beatdown deck with late game grindy potential. Like it does a good mid range thing where like it can be a beatdown deck, it can pivot. And one thing that I would caution folks against is that the uncommon signposts don't really matter. They're not bad cards, but they're not hooks into the deck, and there are many, many, many other cards that you will take over them. So Judge Magister Gabrynth is the white-black 2/2 menace that grows every time something dies for you, and Rufus Shinra is the 3-mana 2/4 that makes a 2/2 legendary when it attacks if you don't already have that legendary. They're just they're good. They're good cards, but neither of them are like things like when you see a Shantoto, you're like, ooh, I could do the blue-red thing. Black White's not really doing that with either of these signposts.
Do you know how you do the grinds your gears segment in our 50 takes?
Yeah.
Do you know what grinds my gears? Is the fact that the stupid dogs that
Uh-huh.
legendary and the green white legendary make are legendary. And you can't tell on Arena. I almost lost several games because my opponents can crack their blitz balls. So I'm like, nothing legendary is getting through. It's fine. And like those stupid
Oh.
little dogs are legendary. And then I've let my opponents crack blitz balls to dig for stuff and get back in the game. Why are the dogs legendary? And I'm sure there's Final Fantasy lore and all the Final Fantasy nuts can tell me, but those dogs should not be legendary.
That's fair. The reason I think of this deck as artifacts is I think that's where you get your card advantage from. So stuff like, and this is all in the white space. So Magitech infantry, grabbing other Magitech infantries out of your deck. Delivery Moogle, the 3/2 flyer that grabs an equipment or not an equipment, an artifact, 2 mana value less. And Ash, Princess of Dalmasca, that's the 3/2 that when it attacks you, look at the top 5 and can reveal an artifact. Like those are really nice ways to get card advantage from that deck, and you need to be packing your deck full of artifacts to make those work. You can also, I think you're going to talk about green white legends in a minute. You can do some life gain stuff or legend stuff that green white does depending on the rares that you get, and that's sort of the fun slash finicky part about this archetype is that it can go in many different directions depending on the bombs or the pockets of synergy you have, right? Like if you get a Vanat, then you're going to want to go legends, or you want to go more equipment, or maybe you're heavier creatures, in which case you do want a copy of Fight On in your deck, or maybe you're going more beatdown and you want flyers, like, or more removal, and that means you're more controlling. There's just a lot of different things that you have to be aware of. It's not like oh, this deck is always doing game plan X. It has a lot of different paths you can go down.
So, just listening to you talk about this, would you say that it is primarily a white deck that then you're adding things from black to? Is that a fair assessment of the deck?
Yes. Yes. I think it's definitely heavier white than black. Black giving you the premium removal spells. Phantom Train we'll talk about in a little bit. But yeah, white cards are a lot of what. And I think Black Mage's Rod also is really good. Like if you're heavy on the equipment plan, Black Mage's Rod is awesome in this deck. Weapons Vendor goes up in value for you. But yeah, I would say primarily a white deck. Which brings me to Choo Choo Phantom Train. This is the 3 and a black 4/4 vehicle with trample. You crew it by sacrificing something and you put a +1/+1 counter on it when you do so. That doesn't limit to once per turn. So this makes this card, I know we've talked about this before, but bears talking about again. It makes this card incredibly difficult to deal with in combat if the board is at all full. Because you either have to go, okay, I need to count up all the things you have. What is the greatest? How big could you make this Phantom Train? Do I have the ability to jump in front of the train, as it were, to put everything in front of it and trade with it? Or do I just have to let this thing through? And oftentimes your opponent lands on the side of I have to let it through, or maybe they think they have more time than they do. And I will say Phantom Train plus Albed Salvagers is just truly Splinter Twin. That's the 2 and a black, 2/3. Whenever something, an artifact or creature you control dies, you drain them for 1. I have gotten my opponents down from 20 in a turn with those 2 cards.
Well, but that's the wrong analogy. It's not Splinter Twin. It's Ravager Affinity, baby. It's like Arcbound Ravager plus Disciple Vault. Is what it is.
Sure, that's a less sexy. I don't know. I don't think people say that's Ravager, baby. That's old school Affinity. Um, a bit of a hotter take, and we probably should have just talked about this card earlier, but I have found a little love for Vincent's Limit Break this week.
Oh yeah.
This is the one in a black trick. Makes the thing's base power, and it's tiered like base power 3/2, 5/2, or 7/2, and then it comes back. I don't care about the when it comes back part.
You just want to turn things into 7/2s?
So Galacat, Jellycat, plus Vincent's Limit Break
9/7
on its
or
that's
9
9
2.
power,
Yeah.
power in the air. If you've got 2 artifacts, this is just like 2 mana, or I guess it's 4 mana when it's tiered. It's Lava Axe, but more when you're doing it on a flyer. It's a lot of damage out of nowhere, and so like Phantom Train plus Albed Salvagers or Galacat plus Vincent's Limit Break. That's the Galacat Limit Break thing is much more niche. I'm not recommending you pack your deck full of Vincent's Limit Breaks, but I had a draft that went sort of poorly, ended up putting Limit Break in my deck, and was thinking I would use it with whatever, Heck Dies or something. And then
Sure.
I just found myself in multiple spots where I was like, oh, you're just dead.
That's what I was watching Newmont stream earlier this week, and he kept doing that with that card too. It was like, well, Vince's Limit Break does it again. Sometimes it was that. Sometimes it was 7/2ing the opponent out of nowhere. Sometimes it was, getting back a key card. But I was watching, and it was very good for him as well.
I've shouted out Adventurer's Airship before for this deck. I do think this is the best home for the Struggler's Copter, and you actively want at least 1, sometimes 2 copies of this card in this deck if you're skewing a bit more aggressive. Like flying is really good. Non-creature creatures are very good. Like being able to go Black Mage's Rod into Airship, you ping them, play something else later, and then crew it. And because the deck, especially if you're in best of 3, like the deck is mana hungry, and so you're often inclined to run certainly at least 17 lands plus other things, or 18 lands, and then being able to dig through those pockets of lands when you don't want them is just a really nice place to be. Some brief overperformers. Namazu Trader, the 3 and a black 3/4 that makes a treasure when it comes into play. Just like 2 rectangles there. 4 toughness is so key on the ground in this format, I've found. Yeah, it's a 4-drop, but and so you're not like taking it highly. You're obviously playing your removal over it and things like that. But Trader is a good card. Grahatia, the 5 mana 3/5 reach in white that lets you draw a card every time something, once per turn when something dies on your side of the battlefield. So this is obviously this card's best home. Summon Anima is the 6 mana 4/4 menace saga in black that lets you draw a card on each of the first 3 chapters. Just like these ways that you get card advantage out of the deck is nice. Tonberry, if you're skewed a little bit more aggressively, I think this is Tonberry's best home, probably. That's the single black 2/1 Death Touch first strike on your turn. And it's like comes in with a tapped and with a stun counter on it. And then we talked about Ring of the Lucci. I think this is probably the deck's best home, but now it just sounds like we think this card is good and people need to put it in more decks.
Card's a performer. It's not an overperformer. Card's a stud.
Underperformers, you would think stuff like Dwarven Castle Guard and Undercity Dire Rat would be good in these decks, like a body that dies into another thing. I have found that you really want your rectangles up front. Like Black Mage's Rod giving you the
Job Select is way better than both those cards, right?
It's way better than both those cards, but that would not be like, I would think like, oh, Black-White, it's sacrifice a grindy, like Dwarven Castle Guard and Rat makes sense there, and just sort of off those cards. And Shinra Reinforcements, I don't think is particularly good in this card. Maybe in this deck, maybe if you're more controlling. This is the 2 and a black 2/3 gain 3 mill 3 when it comes into play. But you usually want to have your cards be able to skew a little more aggressively. Like I would much rather have Adventurer's Airship in the 3-drop slot. Obviously, I'd rather have Galacat in my 3-drop slot. I just don't think Reinforcements gets there.
So one question I have for you, and not to doubt the deck here, but just a thing that I found when I played Black-White, and I haven't done it nearly as much as you. How does the deck get card advantage? Like, and you mentioned Grahatia and Summon Anima and things like that, but how does it compete with decks that are like actually up on cards, like 3, 4, 5 cards? Because you can do that pretty easily in the format as well. Like, and some of the cards you're mentioning, like Albed Salvagers or Vincent's Limit Break or even Struggler's Copter, like, is not the Adventurous Airship. Like, do you ever have draws where you draw like your some of your 18th through 23rd cards and then the deck just kind of falls flat? Like, how do you avoid that in the deck?
I mean, you can't avoid that in any deck. Like sometimes you will draw your 6 worst cards, and this deck, I think, especially if you're not drafting it responsibly, as I certainly can be prone to do, you will like you might. One of the reasons I like this deck is it's often open, but if you're trying to draft it and it's not, you can get yourself in a tricky spot with card quality. But I will say, I the thing you're talking about has existed for me. Like if my opponent fires off, I don't know, certainly the town draw for or a couple combat tutorials, yeah, you're feeling a little bit of a pinch, but that's why I like building the deck with the sort of aggressive
Bent.
game plan A, because it makes like if my opponents, that gives me the chance against those opponents that are like, I'm tapping out to draw a bunch of cards. Like, cool, then I'm gonna trigger
I'm gonna
my
Phantom
my
Train smack you
wizards and I'm
around.
gonna phantom train smack you around, or I'm gonna crack in with my Gallicat and my airship, and you're just not gonna have enough time to recover from that. So
Okay.
that's what I would say about that is like try and build it a bit more with an aggressive bent than a controlling bent, because I think you'll get yourself into trouble because you can get card selection, right? Again, this is a great home for Resentful Revelation, but that's not quite card advantage unless you're
Vantage, right?
flashing it back. Yeah.
Okay, that checks out. All right, that takes us on to my other pet deck of the format, which is Green White Legends, which is basically white Legends that happens to play some green cards alongside them.
Have you drafted this a fair amount?
I have.
Wow.
So
Okay.
not recently, but like the first 2 weeks of the format, play this deck. I don't know, probably between 5 and 10 times.
Nice.
So rares are the best reason to go into the deck.
Mm-hmm.
Banat, I think, is the most premium one, which is the 1 white 3/3. Whenever you cast a legendary, you draw a card, and you can pay 7, tap, exile it, and then you get to exile one of your opponent's permanents while flipping it into a 4/4 indestructible that puts counters on your team. You're drawing more cards. It's ridiculous. That card's a bomb. Sarah Farron is one that you can get late, which is pretty awesome for the deck. It's 1 green white for a 2/2. First legendary creature spell you cast costs 2 less to cast. And at the beginning of combat on your turn, if you have 2 or more legendaries, it flips into an artifact that gives your legendary creatures +2/+2, and your legendaries are still cheap to cast. I've done green white like soup, like Blitzball 5 color legendaries. I don't think that deck is very premium, but like true, you're getting a bunch of the white rare legendaries or the white good uncommon legendaries plus the green legends. Like green white legends, I think is very good.
Hmm.
Usually the deck has a life gain package because a lot of the white legendary creatures care about you gaining life and or have life link to help support that theme. So there's cards like Aerith Gainsborough, which is 2 and a white for the 2/2 life link. Whenever you gain life, you put a counter on it. Whenever it dies, you put X plus almost 1 counters on each legendary creature you control, where that's the number of counters that Aerith had. So that one's good in that, like, that's just a fine card that kind of works with itself. But in a lot of these legendary cards in the legendaries deck get supercharged in this archetype.
Mm.
Like you'll just play Aerith in most white decks, and maybe you'll put some white Mage's Staffs along with it. But if you get into the true legendaries deck, it's so good. And then Minwu White Mage is the 3 white 3/3 Vigilance Lifelink. Whenever you gain life, you put a +1/+1 counter on each cleric you control. White Mage's Staff conveniently turns things into clerics, which is very
Right.
nice. Aerith Gainsborough herself is a cleric, so there's some nice synergy there. And we already talked about Stiltskin, which is the 1/2 lifelink that can trade things with your opponents. That helps you trigger your life gain synergies, all that sort of stuff. It's not a cleric, but can go in the life gain package. And because
Mm-hmm.
of that life gain package and the legendaries caring about life gain, White Mage's Staff is one of the best commons for the deck. It's the 1 and a white 2/2 job select, makes a 2/2 cleric that whenever it attacks you gain a life, and that makes all these legendary things that trigger off life gain so much harder to interact with in combat. Restoration magic is insane in this deck because you've got a lot of key cards that are creatures that you want to protect. Like a lot of your engine cards are creatures, And then it also, assuming you can hold up more than one mana, plays into that life gain theme as well. Restoration Magic can lead to absurd blowouts in this deck. And speaking of wanting to protect cards, conveniently, you've got a Legends theme. Zac Fair is a legend that protects your other legends, which the single white 0/1 enters with a +1/+1 counter, and you can sack it to give something indestructible, and then put its +1/+1 counters on that creature as well. Ambrosia Whiteheart, conveniently, another legend that can, again, pick up your legends, save them from removal. So there's a lot of ways, like your deck is very tied into creatures, but there's lots of ways to protect your creatures. Phoenix Downs, another great card here, that can rebuy those key legends like Vanat or Sarah, that sort of stuff. The best versions, I think, are heavy white. Like, truly, that's the most important piece. The decks I found that are the best, base green white, base blue white, and then you could also do Bant decks that are green white, but you play the blue for the card advantage. Heavy white's super key. Like, you can't do the deck if you're not heavy white because the best legends are all white. So you really need white to be open. You need those legends to be flowing to you. If you're not getting white legends and you're thinking about drafting this deck, if that's not flowing, you gotta abandon ship and do something else. Like, you cannot force your way into this deck at all.
That's what I was gonna ask. Is like, it feels like the only card that would make me want to draft this deck from jump is Vanat.
Sarah as well. Sarah's really good.
Really? I have.
Assuming you get the white legends. Now, you have to get the
But
white legends. Like, it's
that's what I'm
hard to
saying.
get
It's a
past those
hard.
cards.
I feel like Sarah Farron is a really hard sell. Vanat is like a thing where I'm like, I can do the legends thing, but this will also just be good in a white deck. Sarah Farron is really like, you got to do the thing, and this thing is not tier 1, is it?
I mean, when it comes together, it certainly is. It's hard to get it to come together because you have to have so many
Yeah,
good cards flow to you. But it's not insane. Like, Aerith Gainsborough is not broken. It's not crazy to get Aerith 5th pick or something. And Minwu White Mage is
sure.
definitely not premium, but it is for this deck. It's not crazy to get that 7th, 8th pick or whatever. Stiltskin's not an insanely high. Like, it's, if white is
If
open,
white is
it's
open, yeah.
it's not crazy for this deck to come together. But white really has to be open. I would not advise forcing it. I've forced it early in the format several times, and that doesn't go well. But if it comes to you, I do think it's a very strong deck. The biggest pitfall for the deck is what I was asking you about with White Black Legends is if you're
Mm,
not packing blue and you're not packing card advantage, the deck is very prone to, well, these are the cards I drew and these are the ones I'm casting, and if you don't find your Vanats or whatever, the deck can fall a little bit flat. So I like the blue card advantage along with the deck quite a bit.
I think one of the reasons the black-white deck doesn't have quite as similar of a problem is there's less like, for the deck you're outlining, it sounds like if I don't draw my Vanat, if I don't find my these key pieces, the black white deck has less of a, there's these key pieces I need to find, and if I don't, my deck crumbles. But
Well,
it
it's not
sounds
that
like
you have
that's,
to find Manat, but you also need to find your Aerith, or you need, like,
yeah,
there's just specific cards. It's more, it's not that you need to find key cards. It's that the bottom 6 cards in your deck are significantly worse than the top 6 cards in your deck or whatever. The deck is very top half of the deck heavy, and when you draw those cards, the deck feels broken. When you don't, it feels significantly less powerful. So maybe not tier 1 in that sense. Blitzball's
gotcha.
fine here. Like, we were thinking, is Blitzball going to be whatever the new 3
Globe,
mana rock? It's
yeah.
fine. It's, you'll play Blitzball. It's not anything to write home about. But mostly because I think the multicolor versions of the deck are not that good.
Yeah, I found Blitzball to be, honestly, I like Blitzball a lot in Dimir decks, like, or Esper decks where you can, again, it's sort of like the Ring of the Lucci thing where how many pieces, parts of the card do you care about, and it's less about fixing, more about, I like the ramp, I like my divination with when my legendary creatures connect, and I like that it's an artifact when I care about artifacts.
Yeah. Yeah, that checks out.
Last deck I want to touch on in here is Blue Green X Towns. I finally got a chance to play with this deck this week, and I like it. Like I said, I cast draw 4 for blue and never looking back. It really does operate like a cube style ramp deck. Like, you want your early plays to ensure you hit your land drops, ensure you're brickwalling your opponents or speed bumping your opponents as you're getting to your powerful top end. I've had like long list of cards here. I've been talking a lot about how 1/4 is like the stat to hold things back on the ground. Scorpion Sentinel is good in this deck because it's going to turn into a 4/4 the more you're ramping. That's the 1/4 that becomes a 4/4 when you have 7 lands. Keycairn Merchant, the 3 mana 1/4, that holds the ground and then also is your card advantage later in the game. Like, yeah, you'll get some loots, but it's really like if the game is going along at any point, or if you feel like since the game is going to go long and Keycairn Merchant really helps that happen, you know they're going to draw 3, and that feels real bad. Card advantage things like Combat Tutorial, things that hold the ground like Bard's Bow, things that ramp obviously are excellent like Igniscientia and Summon Fenrir. Torgal, a Fine Hound in the 2-drop slot to ramp. Town Greeter, obviously. It's interesting, like Dragoon's Wyvern is still, it's obviously good. It's just like, it's not what the deck is trying to do at all in the 3-drop slot, you know?
Yeah, the deck almost might want Bard's Bow more. Bard's Bow is any deck that wants to just stop the game.
Yes.
Like really wants Bard's Bow. I think I had Bard's Bow as fairly replacement level in my head until Vegas weekend again, and after playing a ton of Magic, like you're just overloaded on Magic after that weekend, or at least I am. Although I did come home and draft a couple times. Not the next day. I gave myself a day of cleansing.
I took the same flight as our friend J Maz back to Pittsburgh, who had won the PTQ that weekend.
Uh-huh.
We were sitting in our layover in Washington, D.C. at whatever, 7 a.m., 8 a.m. after taking a red eye.
Man was on Arena?
Takes out his phone and fires up a draft. He's like, so what do you take here? I was like, what is wrong with you? But then I was like, all right, let's do this.
I gave myself a day of cleansing before diving back in.
Good for you.
Detoxing, as it were. Bard's Bow is above replacement level for sure if you just want the game to stop. Because your opponent either has to use a removal spell on it or they're jamming some flyer they don't want to jam into it, like a Gala Cat, and then you can re-equip. Because the deck's good at hitting land drops also. Like there's real re-equip threat for Bard's Bow out of this deck too, I think.
For sure. Yeah. Poo Poo UFO. This is the 2-mana artifact, 0/4 flyer. Tap it to put a land from your hand onto the battlefield, and you can pay 3 to have its power become equal to the number of towns you control. It's funny, Eduardo shouted this out as a combo with Combat Tutorial when we were talking to him in Vegas. And I guess the combo is one, it wears the counter very well. Now it's a 1/5 flyer. But also then the more cards you have, the more likely you are to take advantage of the dumping lands and etc. I think you have to have a really good version of this deck, but Poo Poo UFO really is doing a lot of the things the deck wants to do, and the fact that it's an 0/4 flyer, so it's not only holding back those 2 and 3 power things on the ground, but is also holding off a Dragoon's Wyvern or a Gala Cat from your opponent. I think this card is pretty good in the deck. Much like these cube ramp decks, you gum up the ground, you hit your land drops until you hit your super impactful plays. You better be packing bombs, right? Your sins or whatever you've got at the top of your curve. At non-rare, Travel the Overworld, the draw 4 is awesome. Coliseum Behemoth, a couple of 7-drops here. Coliseum Behemoth, the 7/7 trample that either draws a card or naturalizes on ETB. And Omega, Heartless Evolution, that's the 8/8 artifact that stuns something for equal to the number of towns you control and gains you life. Those are all just like really good things to be doing once you're hitting all your land drops. The big question, when to take towns. I'm still not really trying to take towns very early in the draft, or like, it depends. Like I had a draft the other day where I went Cloud of Darkness first, then Omega second. I took something third, and then I took a Dimir Town fourth. Like you can have a sense early in a draft of like, yeah, I'm just going to be doing this. But if you're getting into it a bit more, organically and naturally, you probably want to not take towns until pack 2 and pack 3, and just be aware that like not all towns are created equal. Sultai towns are definitely greater than the others, so the blue-green, the blue-black, and the black-green. And the Mardu towns are definitely the least important. White-red, red-black, and black-white, just because those don't overlap with blue and green, which are your base colors. Just to shout a couple overperformers and underperformers, Grand Pulse Ochu. So definitely a sealed overperformer, the single green 1/1 Death Touch, pay 8 to make it big. But this gums up the ground too early if you don't have anything else for it. And Airship Crash, Flyers is such a, like, that's, if we could go back and do a revised truths of the format. Flying is good in limited is a truth of this format, and I know that's
Yes.
always the joke, but like flying's really important. That's how this deck is going to lose if you don't have defensive speed in the air. Airship Crash is totally fine to main deck. One of the real cards that this deck has a problem with is Dragoon's Lance, because it's not the creature that's the problem, it's the equipment. And if you don't have a way to interact with the Lance, you're just going to die over the course of the game. So I think main decking Airship Crash in this deck is totally fine.
Yeah, I think main decking Airship Crash and green decks in general in the format is totally fine, personally.
Yeah. Underperformers, I am not a Gubu Gardener fan. The 1 and a green, 1/3 mana dork. I don't think that's it. I think 4 toughness on the ground is better, and I think this eventually stops doing the thing. And Summon Fat Chocobo is just slightly like, yeah, it's a good card, but it's in that mid-range space that this deck is not playing in. Like, you don't really want your 5-drop to only be around for a couple turns, and so it's just not quite what the deck wants to be doing.
Yeah, that all checks out to me.
What do the other colors offer? What would I be splashing for? Black is your most likely third color, and you will be splashing in your blue-greens town deck. I mean, maybe one color, maybe all 3 of the other colors, whatever. Black is your most likely splash thanks to Sephiroth's Intervention and Cloud of Darkness being bangers that are single-pipped to splash. Red gives you Thunder Magic and Suplex. They're both fine to splash if you need removal. Fire Magic is really good in this deck because you're packing
Fire
a lot
Magic
of
is nuts.
you're packing so much 4 toughness stuff in this deck. It's very easy for this to be a one-sided wrath against a lot of decks if you're casting it for 6 mana. Both of the red-green signposts are nice. Gladiolus Hamachita, the 6-drop that gets a town, and every time you hit your land drop, you give something +2/+2 and trample. And even Rydia, Summoner of the Mist, like you don't usually want to splash a 2-drop, but like if you have a couple summon Fenrir's in your blue-green deck, I would splash Rydia for sure. Call the Mountain Chocobo is exactly what this deck wants to do. It just depends how deep your red splash is, because
Because you can run out of mountains.
you can run out of mountains to get, which significantly decreases the value of this card. But if you end up in a sort of true teamer deck where you're doing something like 5/4/4 and then 4 towns or something, like, then yeah, sure, you can play Call the Mountain Chocobo. And white, I think, is the hardest color to splash because so much of its good cards are white. But if your mana is really, really good, and you can play the white cards, like if you're true teamer, I was talking about with Call the Mountain Chocobo, if you're true Bant and your fixing's good enough, then you get to play a lot of really good white cards. And again, might be, you talked about, it could be Bant Legends. It could be Bant Legends towns. Could be some overlap there with this deck.
I just clarifying question, because it feels like the deck you're outlining here is blue-green splash more than blue-green towns. How integral of a piece of the deck do you feel like towns are?
They're integral because like I want my, you don't have to have like 8 towns. Like you probably have 8 towns if you have, I played the blue green rare, I don't know its name, the 1/3 that if you have 5 towns in your beginning of combat you get a 2/2 elemental. Yeah, get that in this version, then yeah, you're going to be aggressively taking towns. The other like air quotes towns payoffs you can get by with just a few, like Omega Heartless Evolution. If you're tapping something down for 3 turns, that's good. If your Travel the Overworld costs 5 instead of 7, that's fine, right? Like, so it doesn't need to be towns, but you do need them in the deck, is what I would say. Like something in the 4-ish range, 4 to 5.
If you only have 4, you're rarely going to have more than 2 in play, unless you're also packing ways to search them up. Certainly can go a long way. So
right,
being more selective with them while also having ways to fetch them, as it were, could be good. So how much, the blue green rare was what I was going to ask you about too. I've played with that card and built around it a fair amount. It's tough to get that card to trigger. It's hard to get 5 towns in play. Yes. I think that card's best aspect is the Wooburg activation.
Totally
rather than making a 2/2 zombie every turn. So if you are interested in building around that, beware. Like it's tough. Like I've had 8 towns plus some ways to search them up, and it's tricky to get to 5 sometimes to find that 5th one. They really did hit the number nicely there, and that it's not trivially easy to do with that card.
For sure.
Don't think it goes in every deck. How much of you're playing Travel the Overworld in this deck, even if you only have 3 or 4 towns, right?
Yeah.
Like you're fine. So in that sense, like that's what I mean when I say like to me, blue-green towns would be like, well, I'm packing 10 towns and I'm doing 5-color awesome sauce. That sort
You
of thing.
can do that. You can do that.
Right.
All I would say is like by virtue of your blue green splash and by virtue of wanting Key Kieran Merchant in your deck and Travel the Overworld in your deck and Omega Heartless Evolution in your deck,
You value towns.
you're going to want towns, but it's not like I'm never first picking a Sultai town to get into this like you would have maybe first picked a Sultai Snowland in Kaldheim to get into the snow deck.
Sure. That's what I was trying to dig into. That helps me out. And that's, I think, how I'm viewing it as well.
Yeah. Cool. It's someone on stream. I don't stream that much anymore these days, but I was streaming a little bit the other day and someone was like, I'm really loving this format. How are you feeling about it? And I was like, I think it's good, not great. Like, I don't know. It doesn't really do it for me. And then as I was drafting it, I was just like, I don't know, maybe it is great. Maybe this format is just great because there's not really anything not to like. Like, it's pretty balanced. Almost everything is viable. There's cool build arounds. There's some niche decks. There's like the gameplay is good. It's interactive. I don't know. Maybe I'm just a grumpy Gus, but I think this format just might be great.
I think this is a very good format. Like I came out hot.
You did.
In GOAT territory, so I have walked it back a little bit, as it were, but I think we're probably meeting in the middle. I think this is a very good format. This is not an all-time format for me, but my love of Sorceress' Schemes and Triple Triad, if I get to draft that deck a lot more, stocks are going to be going up because that deck is a dream to play. So I do like that I now have a pet deck officially in the format that I can bias my drafts. That's when I'm happiest drafting, is just completely incorrectly skewing towards something and then seeing what I can salvage out of it when I don't get to do the thing that I was skewing towards.
It's like me like forcing Karuga decks in Cube, just like assuming I'm going to get past Karuga. And then when I don't, just ending up with a deck with all mana value 3 stuff for no reason. People are like, why
except if you miss on Triple Triad, you're still going to have a bunch of removal, which is a great place to be in the format.
Correct.
All right. Any parting thoughts before we go?
No, I feel like we could like honestly re-rack this style of episode again. Not that we will, but like it speaks to the depth of the format. Like we could probably each bring 2 more pet decks next week and talk about it, or just talk about flavors of the top tier decks that we like. Like we haven't talked about really green, black, or blue, red in depth, just because I feel like those are sort of publicly known or widely known good decks, but there's a lot to offer here.
I agree. I don't think I would feel as passionately about them, but certainly the depth of content is there. Well, the format's really deep. I think it's a good format. I will say I'm jonesing to draft. It's been a second for me. It's been 4 or 5 days.
Well, let's wrap it up here.
I want to wrap this up and fire up a draft today.
Let's do it.
All right. And on that note, thank you as always to Salty Pretzels for our intro and outro music. Make sure you give it a listen.
You can find all of our content at lordsoflimited.com. There's links to our Patreon page if you want to check that out. Get in on the Discord and the podcast feed. You can find our tier lists, our merch. If you want a Mad t-shirt to rock at your next Magic Con, you can get that there as well. Our episode backlog, our YouTube channel, our Twitch streams, all that is available at lordsoflimited.com.
If you've got any feedback about the show or any questions, shoot us an email at lordsoflimited@gmail.com.
Thanks so much for listening, and we'll catch you next week for another episode of Lords of Limited.
Thanks, everybody. See you later.